Doesn't it look like the most boring piece of metal compared to the greater complexity of the regulator? Well, don't let appearances fool you. This tiny valve connector is secretly the star of this show. And today, I'm here to spill the tea on why this humble connector is at the center of the worldwide scuba debate, and why it matters more than you think. I've been diving around the world, and when arriving at different destinations, I've had a few uh-oh moments when the regulator didn't quite match the tank. And that's a frustrating experience. How complicated can it be to connect one thing to another thing, right? Let's rewind to the 1950s. Diving was booming, gear was evolving fast, and divers were pushing the boundaries of what was possible underwater. That's when the yoke system, also known as a clamp to a K valve, entered the scene. For simplicity, I'll call it the yoke connection. The yoke system quickly became popular among beginners and rental shops. It's easy to use and easy to teach. But as divers started going deeper and pushing the limits, the yoke system's limitations became more apparent. Then enter the DIN system, short for Deutsches Institut für Normung. I'm sure I butchered that. This German-engineered solution, developed in the 1980s, was designed to handle high-pressure demands of technical diving. For a while, the diving world was split. Tech divers gravitated toward DIN for its high pressure tolerance and security, while casual and rental divers stuck with yoke for its simplicity and widespread availability. Today, yoke still rules in North America and nearby regions, while DIN dominates pretty much everywhere else. It's not a hard rule, more of a strong tendency that is the case. You can usually find or buy either system in any world. My theory, being an American, is that once we adopt a standard, we like to stick to it. Yoke came first, it works, and we kept it. And since the US has a lot of influence on our neighbors, the yoke standard stuck around in this part of the world. But when it comes to renting during international travel, be ready to adapt. Your regulator might not work with every tank, but don't worry, there are solutions. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video, now's a great time to like it and subscribe. I post weekly to help divers grow their skills, build confidence, and explore the ocean with curiosity and care. And by the way, if you're interested in being in the know with the latest and greatest in the scuba industry, please feel free to subscribe to a monthly newsletter I'm going to be starting soon in the description below. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. These two systems have a few quirks that can seriously affect your diving experience over time. The yoke system is basically a clamp shaped like an A that fits over the tank valve. Then you turn the knob of the clamp to apply pressure and hold the regulator in place. The key thing to watch out here is the O-ring, which is located on the tank valve. Over time, the O-ring becomes one of the most common failure points in the gas connection. If it blows during a dive, the air will quickly drain out of the tank. Now, this isn't to scare you. There's usually time to manage the situation calmly, but only if you stay cool. But it will end your dive early. If you're using a rental tank, take a moment to inspect that O-ring before attaching your regulator. They're easy to spot when they're damaged or dry. Look for cracks or any debris on the O-ring. And if you notice it's on its last legs, just let the dive center know. Or better yet, carry some spares with you. Now, DIN works a bit differently. The regulator has a male threaded post that screws into a DIN tank's female connection. It also uses an O-ring, but just in case, the O-ring is on your regulator. So with DIN, you are responsible for the O-ring's condition. So it's more important that you check it and know the condition of it, which honestly, in my travels, I trust me keeping an eye on it more than the rental shops. You'll find you will generally do a better job at it. And that means if you're maintaining your own gear, you'll always know it's in good shape. The threaded connection also protects the O-ring better than yoke, making it less likely to get damaged or displaced. This is why many divers feel DIN connection is more secure. It's literally screwed in while the yoke system is just clamped on. That said, yoke blowouts are relatively uncommon, especially if you're checking those O-rings. Many divers may go hundreds of dives without experiencing one, but they do happen and are usually due to poorly maintained O-rings or improper setup. The system still works well. And quick pro tip, when you attach your regulator to your tank, as soon as you put it on there, you should pressurize the system. So if you start moving the tank around or anything happens, usually once you pressurize the system, it will protect this key part and the insides of the regulator. So it's just a good practice to just go ahead and pressurize it. And if you have any leaks, you'll know pretty quick while you're working on the rest of your stuff, you'll hear it. So that's a good time to turn it off and check where the source of the leak is. Okay, back to yoke. It still works for most recreational divers when properly cared for. It's just something to be aware of that sometimes those rental O-rings will give out on you. So keep that rule in mind. Always check the O-ring yourself. From my experience, the dive shops are always chaotic and are not always the most diligent. So another reason that DIN is more favored is that it supports higher pressure tanks. The yoke standard supports up to 230 bar or 300 or about 3,350 psi maximum. Now technically that's accurate, but most divers round this down and call it the 200 bar standard, just for simplicity. I'll go ahead and use that from here on. DIN systems, on the other hand, often, but not always, support up to 300 bar or 4,350 psi. Just know that not all DIN tanks are high pressure. Here's the key. DIN tanks usually come in two types, 200 bar or 300 bar. An easy way to tell them apart is by looking at how many threads are in that female connection. The 200 bar connection is much shorter and has about 5 threads deep, and this one is more common. The 300 bar version is deeper with 7 threads. And when you're screwing in your regulator, it will feel like forever. If it has 7 threads and it's feeling like forever, you probably have yourself a 300 bar tank. Now, for your regulator's first stage, a 300 bar DIN connector will work on both 200 and 300 bar tanks, but a 200 bar connector won't seal on a 300 bar tank. And that's by design, to let you know the connection isn't compatible. So to be clear, a 300 bar DIN first stage can be used on either tank. A 200 bar DIN first stage cannot be used on a 300 bar tank. Price-wise, DIN regulators tend to cost a little bit more upfront due to the precision threading, but they often offer long-term savings and durability. Another plus, DIN systems are often a little bit lighter. You can see how much more bulk this is, and the DIN's a little bit more streamlined and less bulky. Although, if you do carry your yoke adapter everywhere you carry your DIN regulator, obviously, that benefit can quickly disappear. But more on that in a moment. In the end, DIN is newer and technically is a superior standard, but it didn't offer enough advantages to completely replace yoke. It's just not good enough. Not every diver needs a higher capacity tank, and many dive shops kept the gear they already had, which meant yoke stuck around. So now, we live in a world where both of these systems exist and cohabitate to some degree. And that means us divers, especially the ones who travel a little bit, need to be prepared for both standards. All right, now that we've unraveled the mystery of DIN versus yoke, it's time for the big question. Which one should you choose? Well, of course, it's gonna depend. The classic Scuba answer, right? Let me walk you through how I made my choice and what might make the most sense for you too. For me, what's worked well is using a DIN first stage on my regular and always preferring DIN tanks when I can. I kept a yoke adapter for situations like travel or when I'm renting tanks that are yoke only. Important to note, a DIN first stage can use an adapter to fit a yoke cylinder, but a yoke first stage cannot be adapted to a DIN tank. So that makes DIN a little bit more versatile. So if you want the most flexibility, a DIN first stage is the way to go. But now, some divers don't like using adapters. They worry it's a potential failure point and it's extra bulk, or it could be a source of leaking, which is a failure point. Personally, I've never had an issue yet in all my dives, especially if you don't cheap out and you buy a good quality adapter. But I totally understand the concern. It's also worth noting that some tanks come built in with adapters called pro valves. And pro valves have an insert area where you can screw in this piece into the valve neck, which turns the tank into a yoke tank. And you can take it out to turn it into a DIN tank. The adapter design is simple and effective, so I don't see it as a big risk. Whether you go with a pro valve or an adapter, the adapter design is simple and effective. I personally don't see it as a big risk. And still, I've never heard of a dive incident where anything serious has happened because an adapter was used. But if you really want to avoid adapters altogether, there is a solution. Here's the power move. You can buy 2 first stages, 1 yoke and 1 DIN. Your wallet might cry for a little while, but the peace of mind knowing you're prepared for any tank connection, native to native, yoke to yoke, or DIN to DIN, anywhere in the world is worth every penny. Another nice thing about the solution is all the hoses, your second stages, your SPGs are all easy to swap in between the first stages. From there, if you travel, you can call ahead and ask what tank valves they use, and then bring the appropriate first stage. Money can solve a lot of problems, but if you're not planning on travel much, just match your setup of what your local dive shop uses. You're probably going to be using tanks there and filling your tanks and buying your tanks, so match that setup. If you're buying your own tanks, that opens up some more options. Given that DIN is slightly safer and more flexible, I'd probably just buy DIN tanks and a DIN regulator. Keep it native to native. That sets you up for some good daily diving. Then you can decide whether you're comfortable using an adapter for yoke tanks or want to add a dedicated yoke first stage later on. But again, and I can't stress this enough, don't count on the dive shop to have adapters or extra tanks that match your gear. Always plan ahead. Check with the operator. Show up with a setup that is gonna work. Because the only thing worse than showing up unprepared is missing a dive. Or, well, several, or all of them. So, what is the verdict? While DIN may have started off as a favorite for tech divers, it's slowly becoming the gold standard for every diver. It's safer, it's more secure, and it gives you more flexibility with an adapter. But yoke isn't going anywhere. It still works fine enough. And depending on where you're diving, it might be the common thing to use. In the end, you get to choose what works best for your diving lifestyle. My goal with this video is to break down the confusing bits and help you navigate this DIN versus yoke decision without needing a PhD in scuba engineering. And one last reminder, keep checking those O-rings. Seriously, a missing or busted O-ring can turn your let's dive moment into a oh no real quick. If you've enjoyed this video, I have a whole series on buying considerations and gear breakdowns to help you dive smarter. Check that out here to keep learning. And if you're interested in buying a regulator that is going to be a DIN or a yoke, check that out here. The more you know, the more you'll love and protect the ocean. And until next time.